Imagine navigating a city map that doesn't just show streets or landmarks, but highlights environmental risks for that neighborhood or community. Everything from scorching heat islands to flood-prone zones. This map would be so much more than just lines and colors. It's a survival guide, directing cities on where to plant trees, where to cool neighborhoods, and how to protect vulnerable communities. Many cities lack this critical insight and are forced to face climate risks with blurry, outdated data. Hello, I'm your host, Mike Lake, and in today's episode of Preview of Tomorrow, I'll be speaking with Imeshi Weerasinga, CEO and co-founder of WEO, a company helping communities see precisely where action is needed to make cities safer, greener, and more resilient for the challenges ahead.
Innovation, resiliency, discovery. Join Mike Lake, President and CEO of Leading Cities, as we explore the technologies shaping the possibilities of our future with a preview of tomorrow.
Hello and welcome, Imeshi. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to all of our listeners. Today I'm excited to introduce you to Imeshi, a leader at WEO, a company providing cities with the high-resolution environmental data they need to tackle climate-related risks head-on. With climate change amplifying urban challenges like extreme heat, flooding, and wildfire risks, WEO is enabling municipalities to access affordable, actionable insights for more resilient planning. Imeshi, let's start by learning a little bit about you and your background and what inspired you to address these pressing climate challenges facing our cities.
Hi, Mike, and thanks so much for having me. So myself and Charlotte started WEO 4 years ago now, and one of the main reasons why we did start this was we found that basically cities were not able to access information about the environment and climate risks at the scale they need, at the detail they need, as well as being able to afford this type of data at the frequency they need as well. So we were doing research in this area, and we saw that this information was extremely critical, but not necessarily being applied to benefit the citizens and not being able to be transitioned very quickly from research into application. And so this is one of the main reasons why we decided to start WEO.
So, I mean, clearly we all recognize, well, maybe not all of us, but it's generally accepted that climate is the biggest existential threat to humanity. What is your biggest fear for cities, say, in the next 5 or 10 years?
I think we've all been noticing the differences in sort of weather-related and climate-related risks that we've been seeing in cities to date. Even last summer was extremely different compared to the summer before, for example. And so one of my biggest fears is that we're going to see more and more deaths related to, for example, extreme heat, floods. I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago you heard about the floods in Valencia, and where we saw quite a lot of deaths, which if we can start to mitigate these and understand these risks to in greater detail for these cities, we can avoid them. So my biggest fear is that we're going to face more and more deaths that could be avoided.
You know, you've just reminded me, this is now a couple years old probably, but I think it was 2022 that in Europe alone, over 70,000 excess deaths were recorded, specifically due to heat waves. I mean, when I think about that, it's very clear to me that, I mean, that's a loss of life that we shouldn't have to endure. And frankly, cities and governments have a responsibility to their citizens to make sure that the environment in which they're providing and the citizens and residents are living in is safe. And it's not just safe from crime or the things we typically think of in terms of urban safety, but safe from heat. So tell me, I want to dive a little deeper into what that means. Like what are we seeing? Why are our cities so hot, for instance?
So, I mean, there are several reasons. Obviously, human activities, and we can talk about climate change in general, but some of the things that cities are facing is we're building, we're constructing. Obviously, we need more housing because our urban areas are growing. And so we're sealing off surfaces that, for example, would previously be able to water could penetrate through that if we had a lot of rainfall, for example, or if you had vegetation, it wouldn't heat up so much. So some of the things that are happening where is that we're seeing urban heat island effects, and what this means is that certain areas are finding it difficult to cool down, even in the nights when it does become cooler, the temperature does become cooler, the surfaces themselves don't cool down. And so when this keeps going day after day after day, this problem exacerbates. And so people, especially vulnerable people such as the elderly or people for pregnant women, for example, this becomes really, really difficult for them to tolerate. And this is where we see excess deaths in urban environments when we see very hot temperatures and surfaces and areas not being able to cool down. We call the urban heat island effect, and this is one of the reasons why we had in excess of 70,000 deaths in Europe in 2000, and I believe it was 2013. But I mean, it's just not correct. We shouldn't be doing that. We can avoid it.
I've heard a lot about, I mean, heat islands, obviously, but there's so much talk in cities around their tree canopy, and recognizing to the point you've already made that as urbanization increases, and we've all heard the numbers of, for the first time, more people are now living in cities than anywhere else, and that's only growing, and 70% of the population by 2050, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the point is, there's going to be more construction. There's going to be more of that, as you point out, sealing of the surface. What roles do trees play? I mean, are they effective in addressing this situation, or not so much?
No, they're absolutely a huge benefit to urban areas. So they do so many different benefits, and one of them is cooling down. They trap heat, and and they also help help mitigate flood risks because they slow down the transportation of runoff. So water going through certain areas, they can slow down the effect of accumulating water. And so they've got a huge amount of benefits. They also capture carbon. So basically, as long as a tree is healthy, it's providing ecosystem service benefits, all these different ones that we just described. But if it's unhealthy, then we might see it being actually a heat source, or it being a risk to citizens. So we really need to look after the tree canopy as well.
And, you just, as you were talking about the runoff from rain and whatnot, I'm also thinking about green roofs and the important role that they can play. So let's talk a little bit about flooding, because as you pointed out, the terrible situations in Valencia, but we see flooding happening everywhere. I feel like no matter what week it is, there's a disaster happening somewhere in the world. Tell me a little bit more about the challenges that these floods have. And I do know, again, just looking at Europe, I think it was by 2100, so there's some time, but when you think about it, someone born today, it's their lifetime. We're talking about a 90% increase in the number of floods in Europe. What do you see as the threat there that can be resolved today?
So I think you've heard me talking about this a lot, Mike, but I think one of the biggest things that we can change is, even though there's going to be construction, which exacerbates floods. So sealing off surfaces obviously exacerbates or increases the risk of floods. But greening cities, so basically blue-green infrastructure is one of the biggest keys to mitigating this type of risk, flood risk, also heat risk. So we're talking about all these different types of risks can be actually mitigated by implementing blue-green infrastructure. And so, green roofs, like you talked about, vegetation in general, trees, but also shrubs and grasslands, and they can all help mitigate these effects.
So I now want to talk about WEO and the amazing work that you're doing, because you alluded to it already. There's technology out there to monitor some of the things we're talking about, but it's extremely expensive, and either that eliminates the option for a city to do it at all, or makes it so that it's done very infrequently, and therefore, I mean, just from the data side, you're not getting enough data points, or you're getting data too late. So, tell us more about WEO and the work that you are doing and the technology that you've created.
Sure. So maybe just in a nutshell, what we do at WEO is we take satellite data and we enhance this with in-house developed AI or deep learning algorithms, so that the satellite imagery, the native resolution that you see in satellite imagery is enhanced, and there's more detail that you can see from it. And then from there, what we do is we extract insights about what we've just talked about. So different climate risks, such as the flood risk or extreme heat, and wildfire risk, for example. And then what we do is we also help cities identify possible solutions or possible mitigation strategies for these risks or potential risks that have been identified. The main benefits from our technology is that we use openly available satellite imagery. And generally what it is it's not very detailed, the openly available satellite imagery, and this is why we need to enhance it. And then when we extract these different insights, such as urban heat risk, or where a tree is located and how healthy it is, we can actually pinpoint an individual tree and go to that level with our technology. Whereas if you wanted to use the openly available satellite imagery just by yourself, the native resolution, that's not possible. So this is one of the reasons why we decided to create this technology. And basically the benefit is openly available satellite imagery from NASA or from the European Space Agency. It's available globally. It's available frequently. And so we can extract insights anywhere on the globe. It's freely available. So it's very, very cost efficient. And we can do this quite frequently.
So, I mean, reducing the cost, as I just said, the cost can be a barrier. So, can you give me a sense how much of a reduction are we talking about, and does that make it, more affordable for cities to not only do it but do it frequently?
Yeah, look, it's a fraction of the cost. So I like to use this example, and basically it's a very clear example. Los Angeles did a tree inventory for $2 million USD. We can do it for approximately 20,000. So it's really, really a fraction of the cost. And basically what that means is, instead of doing this tree inventory every maybe 5 or 10 years, you could probably do it every month.
Wow. Now, coming back to the point of that's actual monitoring. That's almost like real time, so to speak, in comparison. So by having that kind of data readily available, those insights, it's really about the insights, readily available, I'm imagining that allows cities to react. So if you see a tree having, as an example, having signs of,
disease
whatever it
or
is. Yeah, exactly. That you can react and save the tree. But tell me some of the other use cases where, if I'm a city official, how would I make the most of this solution?
Yeah, sure. So there are a few. So maybe I can give you some examples of how our clients have used our technology to date. One of our clients have asked us to do a sealed surface map of their city every year, basically, and this informs them uh, of how their constructions are going, but also they can use this type of map updated into their flood modeling and get more accurate flood predictions. And for example, it can also show them how their urban heat is propagating. The other aspects have been, and we've talked about this already, some of the other clients have understood, for example, where their urban heat island effects are. So we've really gone down into sort of property, if not neighborhood, if not property level, to show them what their heat looks like at the property level. So risk of this particular property for an urban heat island effect is very high, for example. And so a city has given us where their sort of vulnerable populations are, for example, with social housing or for elderly, like nursing homes. And so we've looked at that for them and identified, well, there's an urban heat island here and you've got a nursing home here. So this is probably an area that you should probably look into to potentially do some blue-green infrastructure, for example, or whatever solutions you might be able to address here that could cool down these areas or move the nursing home, because it's quite a difficult situation for this particular population. And maybe lastly, I think this is really, really interesting as well. One of the other clients that we've worked with have been mapping and understanding their canopy, their trees, to understand two things. One is at the country level and split up in municipalities, what are the canopy level canopy percentages per municipality, and are they reaching their targets? So for example, this particular municipality has 20% canopy, but their target is 50. So, just tracking that year by year is something that we're doing. And they're also looking at the health of these canopies, because they want to understand, well, this particular country we're working with, they have 80% of their trees are unhealthy, or at least moderately unhealthy, and they want to revive the trees and the ecosystem benefits that come along with healthy trees. So we're working with them on reaching the targets, but also improving health.
And we talked a bit about, in relation to tree canopy, excuse me, green roofs. Are you able to map out green roofs?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike, and it's another use case actually that we're doing on a country level with a government as well. So what we're doing here is we can map existing green roofs, but what we can also do is map the potential for green roofs. So we can do categories: existing, high potential, medium potential, low. Just being very general here. And so with this particular client, what we're doing is we've mapped that, and now we're tracking, because they've put incentive programs in place to understand, to see if they can incentivize the citizens to implement more green roofs. And now we're tracking to see how that works year after year as well.
It's a much more proactive approach. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, listen, it's our time is almost up here, but I do have one last question for you. When you're thinking about, 50 years from now, and let's imagine that, WEO's technology is being utilized as it should be by every community. What do you see as the impact? What does that mean for those communities? What does it mean for the people there? What does it mean for the planet as a whole?
Well, let me first say that I see fully green and blue cities. So I want to see so when we monitor it, and basically I want to see cities using this technology at least once a year, where they track their progress, and you're seeing green roofs on every roof that has a potential for green roofs. You're seeing facades, green facades on every building that we have potential for. We're seeing more and more parks, more and more trees, and connected trees. Trees and vegetation work much better when they're connected. So I want to see, when we see through the satellite, I want to see green instead of, this sort of white glow that we see in urban areas. That's what I want to see. But what the cities will get out of this is obviously these green, amazing cities where all the citizens are healthy, but they will save time and money by using WEO's technology, because it is very, very affordable, and it just means that they can actually get a data-driven approach, not every 5 years, not every 10 years, but at the frequency they want and need, because this information, in my opinion, is extremely critical.
Well, that example you gave of LA and from a $2 million cost to a $20,000 cost, I mean, that is striking, and it definitely can immediately see the difference it means for a community to have much more frequent access to this kind of information. Listen, I'm sorry we're out of time. There's so much more I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. We didn't really get into wildfires. I mean, there's so much more. But, I just, first of all, I want to thank you for your time joining us today on Preview of Tomorrow. But I really want to thank you for the work you're doing. And, every one of us is or has already been or will be affected by climate change. And what I love about this discussion we've just had is seeing that WEO is allowing communities to be much more proactive, to mitigate risks, not just adapting to them and hoping more don't come, but rather changing the destiny, so to speak, by taking the power into their own hands to do something today. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me, and thanks for a great discussion.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Preview of Tomorrow. Listeners like you are essential to advancing our efforts to drive resiliency and sustainability for all. I ask that you give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever streaming platform you prefer. Your feedback helps us to grow and share these brief previews of what life in the future can be. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and encourage others to also join us each week in previewing the possibilities of tomorrow.
Preview of Tomorrow is brought to you by Leading Cities, a global nonprofit driving resilience and sustainability for all by unleashing the potential of the world's cities. Join them at leadingcities.org.